Welcome back, everybody. So on this episode, we're actually going to take a stroll down Lee County Jail. We're going to check out what Wade considered his home for that entire time. And you have to keep in mind all of the calls that are being released and the emails we're going through. This is where Wade was when all of that was happening. We're even going to see the infamous kiosk where Wade proposed to his fiancées, plural. And so we're going to start with a few incident reports and then we're going to move on to the photos. So let's get into it. All right, so our first incident report is dated from June 15th, 2020. They were moving inmates from the downtown jail facility to a lockdown pod because there was broken glass in the vestibule area. So inmate Wade Wilson stood at the doorway to his cell and he put his body weight against the door, preventing it from closing. Wilson was given several orders to stop obstructing the doorway, and he continued to yell, "Fuck you," into the speaker. Wilson was also trying to incite other inmates in the pod to refuse the lockdown with him. And then at approximately 10:46 hours, Pod M was fogged for other inmates that were refusing to lock down. And at this time, Wilson then complied and let go of his door and entered his cell. So he had the following rule violations, which was conduct which interferes with the security and orderly running of the institution, insolence towards a staff member, refusing an order, and then riot. Moving on, we have on October 27th, 2020, inmate Wade Wilson was being escorted to the shower. Prior to placing Wade Wilson in the shower, they began patting him down, and during the search, Wilson became verbally agitated, stating that he couldn't lift his leg and began moving around suspiciously. At this point, they advised Wilson to calm down and to lift his damn leg. Wilson began yelling and cursing, and due to his behavior, they decided to escort Wilson back to his cell. And then at this time, Wilson tensed his arms and attempted to pull away from the sergeant. And for the sergeant's safety, they placed Wilson against the wall while the DFC, Juan, placed his emergency response belt on Wilson's upper torso. And I'll add a photo so you guys know what that looks like. So Wilson was successfully escorted back to his cell without any further incidents. Our next report says that on Friday, January 8th, 2021, while being assigned to 2 East deputy at the main jail facility at approximately 18:27 hours, I witnessed inmate Wade Wilson standing at the day room cell door, masturbating, while looking at me in the officer's station. I informed him that his actions will not be tolerated. Therefore, he will be receiving a disciplinary report on the following rule violations. Number 23, indecent exposure. Anyone who exposes themselves in a lewd or indecent manner. All right, so our next report is dated March 7th, 2021, and they had smelled a strong odor of smoke coming from the cell in which housed Wade Wilson. So they called for assistance and then did a cell search and a pat down. And as they were doing a pat down of Wade Wilson, they felt a foreign object in his buttocks area. So they then escorted him down to a room to conduct a strip search. Wilson was ordered to lean forward so the strip search could be conducted, but he refused. So the deputy attempted to lean Wade forward in an attempt to see what he was concealing, and Wilson quickly lifted his entire body up and attempted to resist the deputy's search by straightening his entire body and squeezing his legs together. So Wilson was placed up against the cage in the attorney room by the deputy, who struck the left side of Wilson's nose, causing a laceration. Wilson continued to resist and was escorted to the ground by the deputies. So another deputy responded to the attorney room to assist, and then once on the ground, Wilson continued to resist and then was placed in issued emergency response belts. And so the nurse was notified, medical was notified of the incident, then they responded. So then the nurse had to come down, and due to Wade being on the ground, the nurse also noticed a foreign object protruding from Wilson's buttocks area. So the nurse was able to remove the object, which was later identified as a darn lighter, along with 2 distinct pairs of women's underwear. The nurse medically cleared Wade at approximately 15:58 hours, and then Wade was escorted to the jail intake so a body scan could be conducted. So no other contraband was located during the body scan, and then Wade was being escorted back to his cell. And then as he's being escorted, he was screaming and attempted to headbutt the escorting officers. So once again, he was escorted to the ground to gain compliance. So medical was again advised, and the nurse had to come back and clear Wade Wilson once again, and then he had a pending mental health evaluation. It goes on to say that Wilson was actively resisting all efforts to escort him back to intake, and they had to use the restraint chair to escort Wade. And Wilson was placed in the restraint chair for his safety, and it explains that they had the right ankle strap, left ankle strap, right arm strap, left arm strap, and then the shoulder strap and waist strap. So once Wilson was actually in that restraint chair, he began making several threats that he was going to unalive himself the first chance that he gets. Medical was present during all of the threats, and the nurse had checked Wilson's restraints prior to him being escorted to intake and noted that he received a laceration to the bridge of his nose during the incident and refused any other medical attention. So Wade will be receiving several disciplinary reports for his actions, which include blocking during a shakedown of the cell, conduct which interferes, contraband, and then the retention of articles, which again, a lighter and 2 pairs of woman panties up his bumhole. Please, someone, make that make sense. So our final report goes on to say that on November 14th, 2023, while being assigned to the core facility, Sergeant Kelly had gone up to the lieutenant and asked if inmate Wade Wilson was issued his very own tablet and blue kiosk. So the lieutenant stated, no, there are no tablets or blue kiosks issued to any specific inmates in dorm 6N. And apparently Wade Wilson had told this sergeant, who I'm guessing is newer, that Lieutenant Anderson said, quote, the tablet and blue kiosk are issued specifically for him to use only. So due to Wade's actions, he will be receiving a disciplinary report for the following rule violations: lying or providing a false statement to staff member, and conduct which interferes with the security or orderly running of the institution. So part of me feels bad for that deputy, because there had to be at least a small period of time where Wade did have free access, as he went to his superior to be like, so is it true that you told Wade Wilson that he could have his very own kiosk and tablet and nobody else is allowed to touch it, while all of the other inmates in that dorm have to share it? Like, no, obviously Wade doesn't have his very own assigned kiosk and tablet, and part of me is also pretty surprised that a deputy wouldn't already know that. So let's take a stroll around Lee County Jail. We're about to get familiar with what Wade Wilson's surroundings were while he was there for many, many years. So the bottom left corner of this image, that is actually additional beds for inmates to use once a cell is already occupied by 2 inmates. So they will just slide that right on in the cell and they will sleep on it. So these are images of the A block and the B block, and there are little areas that they're able to hold inmates if needed. Then when we take a look through this window, you are going to see Dorm 4's common area. So this is where Wade Wilson's buddies and inmates go to socialize and hang out. You have this group of lovely gentlemen who look ready to be here and happy to take this photo. I'm also observing what they're wearing, and I recognize those slipper sandals from a former episode we have done, and we actually saw them sitting in one of Wade's cells. So then they included 2 images of this switch box. I'm not sure exactly what role it played or the significance in Wade's incident reports, but I'm just going to include everything. But you could also see there another one of those QR codes. So now we're standing inside that common area. So there are 2 floors. Wade's cell at this point of time is on that 2nd floor. The 1st floor and the 2nd floor seem to be identical. You have cells to the left, cells to the right, and in that center straight ahead is actually the showers, which we'll be able to see better shortly. So on this floor, they're going to have 2 kiosks. the phones, and then a device that they use to do the face video visits. You have to keep in mind, Wade did not have just one cell his entire duration while he was at Lee County. He was constantly being moved to different dorms, different cells, and he had certain restrictions depending on where he was. And so, like I read in one of those incident reports, Wade wasn't always allowed to have access to a tablet in his cell. So they would have to use the common tablets and the common kiosks. And so there's a good chance that Wade most likely got engaged at one of those kiosks that we're about to see in the image. So here it is. You could actually see on the bottom of this image, you have the two black kiosks, the tiny white tablet, and then the phone. So we're going to get a better look at that right here. And I'm very curious, which of the wives did Wade propose to in this very spot? So now we've made our way to the second floor. And again, just to remind you, this is where Wade's cell was at this point in time. So now we're taking a look at what the cells look like standing from the hallway area. Again, we have that same setup that we saw on the first floor. So you have a few cells, then a double shower, and then another few cells. And then we have specifically cell I-12, which was one of Wade's cells, and we read about it in the incident report earlier. So now we're going to get a better look at those shower stalls. So I didn't realize the setup would be like this. I don't know really what I imagined, but I definitely didn't imagine a row of cells with just two shower stalls in the middle like that. But I also didn't really have high expectations for a jail shower, but it's definitely just as gross as I thought it would be. And I truly don't even want to imagine what has been down that drain. So if you guys remember the earlier incident report that I read where Wade was charged with inciting a riot, the dorm got fogged. These are the showers that they brought them to rinse them off. So again, just taking a look around, documenting the first and the second floor. We're still on the second floor at this point. I just keep thinking about all of those calls that we've heard Wade on, and it just doesn't seem like he was here, like he acts like he doesn't have a care in the world, but in reality, this was his life, and now he's currently on death row. And so I'm really curious to see what his cell would look like there and how it differs from jail. Okay, so this is actually going to be the same cell that we saw in a different episode, the one where he had all of those discovery photographs hanging up. It's the same cell that he removed the stool from and was breaking the window trying to make his great escape. So we're going to see what it looks like completely emptied now. The only thing my mind can think of whenever I see this is every call I've heard between Wade and Jesse where you hear Wade urinating in the background. It is absolutely disgusting, but that's that same very toilet. So we could just see that empty roll of toilet paper, that cardboard tube just sitting on that bottom bunk. So here you'll see what I was referring to earlier. It's an inside out latex or nylon glove, and it appears to be maybe paper. So I'm not sure if that was left behind by Wade himself or if that was maybe a deputy who had done it. I would also love to know what that hole is for on the side of the sink. I've heard some people say that it's for toilet paper. I've heard others say that it's actually a trash bin. So if you know, definitely tell me down in the comments. So then we see that wall where all of the discovery photos were being hung up with. You could see all of those black little dots with whatever he was using as the sticky substance, but each square is literally where a piece of paper, a photograph, something from his discovery was sitting there. And let me just say, that vent at the top is absolutely what nightmares are fueled out of. It is terrifying. I swear you can see a substance that is dripping from it, which I have no idea what that would be, but it's absolutely gross. So a better close-up of those black dots, whatever he was using to hang up the photos with. So you can see the stool is no longer there. We've seen some of these photos in a prior incident report. And so he managed to unbolt that stool and then used pieces of it to smash that window. And we all know he was trying to make the great escape, which we will definitely go over those reports in a future episode. This was the desk that he was hiding that plunger underneath, and still cannot figure out what he was doing with that plunger or why he had it, but part of me feels like I don't want to know. And there's that window that Wade Wilson was going to make his great escape from. It's going to get closer, and you're going to see he did manage to really shatter it, and it spiderwebbed out. But do you actually think he would have been able to get through that glass? And if so, do you think he would have been able to get that middle bar piece off? So Wade got in trouble a few different times regarding the light, whether it was covered or he messed with it. As you can see, those wires are exposed. Originally, people speculated could he have been charging a cell phone with it, but from what I'm understanding now, you could do a variety of things, between using it as a source of power for your tattoo gun down to lighting those 59 cigarettes that we know Bonnie smuggled in for him. What it looks like standing in Wade's cell, looking out towards that common area. Now, I know that that was originally the plastic cup that pills are dispensed in, but what is that white substance smeared on the inside? And you can see it says Wilson I-12. I do not know. I don't know if it's powder or if it's more liquid, but I'm terrified. So again, at the end of the day, this was Wade Wilson's reality. All of those calls, all of those emails, this is truly what his home sweet home was. And now that he is on death row, I'm just so happy to see that they're following through with removing privileges and actually cracking down, because he was allowed to get away with far too much during his stay here at Lee County Jail. And honestly, I take great glory in the fact of knowing Wade's communications, all of those calls and emails that he was doing, they've been revoked until at least May 2025, and I'm sure he is going absolutely crazy without them. So that's it for this episode. Thank you all so much for being here. If you haven't already, please take a moment, hit that thumbs up, leave your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will see you all for the next one.